Hey everyone, and welcome back to Retro Legends. There are times in video game history when the industry stopped playing it safe. It wasn't just about better graphics or more power anymore. It was about completely changing how we play games. These are the times when the most wild accessories came out. Gadgets that promised the future, but often bumped into the limits of technology and expectations that were impossible to meet. Gloves, headsets, bazookas, mats, and giant controllers. Each accessory told a story, an idea, or a mistake. In this video, we're going to take a deep dive into these accessories, looking beyond just how weird they are. We'll see when they came out, how much they cost, what they promised, how many were sold, and why. Most of the time, they didn't work out. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell for more trips into the world of retro gaming. Let's get started. Between the late 80s and mid-90s, the video game world changed a lot. Game consoles started showing up in millions of homes, and companies fought hard to be the best. In this time, extra gadgets for consoles weren't just fun toys. They were super important tools. They helped companies stand out, create new ways to play, and keep people excited about consoles that were already out. But the technology wasn't quite ready for many of these new ideas. Sensors that didn't work well, high prices, and not enough games made many new inventions fail. But that's exactly why today, they're a huge part of gaming history. The Nintendo Power Glove, which came out in 1989 for the NES, was one of the first real tries at bringing motion control to home gaming. It sold for about $80 to $100 and used a mix of technologies: ultrasonic sensors to know where it was in space, and bendy resistors built into the fingers to tell when they bent. It tracked your hand using two transmitters placed near the TV, which helped figure out how far away and in what direction your hand was. But it wasn't very accurate, even when everything was perfect. The device wasn't really plug and play. You had to set it up yourself by typing in number codes on its built-in keypad. These codes were needed to make it work with different games. This process wasn't easy to understand and changed from game to game, making it harder for people to get started. When it came to software, not many games supported it. Only a few games were actually made to use it, while most games that worked with it just mapped the regular controller buttons to it. This made the Power Glove an inefficient replacement for the standard controller. Super Glove Ball was the best example of a game made just for it. But even then, the response to movements was slow and not very reliable. The delay, along with how hard it was to keep your hand steady, messed up the precision needed for any game that relied on good timing. From a building standpoint, the device had clear problems. The materials were cheap, it was bulky, and the connecting cable made it even harder to move around freely, which was what the product promised. Also, because there was no touch feedback, it was hard to feel the inputs correctly, which made a disconnect between your hand movements and what happened on screen. Even though a lot of them were sold, between 1 and 2 million units, not many people actually used it. Many buyers quickly thought it was useless for everyday use. The first sales success was mostly due to strong advertising and a futuristic look, rather than how good the experience was. The Power Glove showed a big problem. The idea of using hand movements to control things was good, but the technology wasn't ready to support it reliably yet. So it remained a clear example of an idea that was ahead of its time, but not yet possible to make. The Sega Activator, which came out in 1993 for the Mega Drive and cost about $8,100, was one of the biggest tries to bring full-body control to home gaming. This device was an 8-sided shape you put on the floor. It had 8 parts with special infrared sensors that made an invisible area around the player. Each side of the octagon was for a direction or a command, and you made it work by breaking the light beam with your body. In theory, you could do tricky moves by kicking, punching, and moving around. But the main problem with how it worked was that it didn't really track your movements. It didn't know where your body was all the time. It just noticed when you broke the infrared beams. This simple way of working made the controls not very exact and hard to use, especially in games where you needed to be fast and do quick combos. Games like Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter II could technically be played with it, but doing the moves was super inconsistent. Even small, accidental movements, like just shifting your foot a little, could make the game do things you didn't want. Another big problem was the space it needed. The device needed a pretty big open area and a flat surface to work right. In most homes, this was a real issue. Plus, how well the sensors worked was affected by things like lighting and stuff in the way, making it even less reliable. There wasn't much software made for it, and it wasn't very good. No games were made just for the Activator's special features. Most games just kind of worked with it, in theory. This led to a bad experience. Games that needed exact controls were being played with a system that wasn't very precise. Sales were super low, estimated to be between 50,000 and 100,000 units worldwide. The device was quickly taken off the market and didn't get any more updates. Even though it failed commercially, the Sega Activator was an important step. It clearly showed that motion control needed not only better sensors, but also a deep connection between the hardware and the software. This was something that wouldn't be figured out until many years later with more advanced technology. The Super Scope, released in 1992 for the Super Nintendo at a price of about $60, was a step up from regular light guns. But it was more about looking cool than being super easy to use. Unlike older light guns, it didn't plug straight into the console with a wire. Instead, it used a wireless system with a receiver plugged into the controller port. This receiver sent signals from a special eye-like sensor inside the gun's barrel. It figured out where you were aiming by watching the screen refresh on your old-school TV, finding your target by the bright spot the TV made. From a tech point of view, this system added a little bit of a delay compared to wired light guns, making it less accurate for quick movements. This problem really showed up in games that needed you to react super fast, where there was more room for error compared to simpler, more direct options. Plus, it didn't always stay perfectly calibrated. Changes in how far you were from the TV or the angle you were holding, it could mess with how accurate your aim was. The design, made to look like a bazooka, really made it stand out, but it also caused some real problems with how it felt to use. It was heavy and the weight wasn't balanced well, so your arms would get tired quickly during long play times. Using it on your shoulder like a rocket launcher felt weird for something that needed to be super accurate. On top of that, it needed 6 AA batteries, and they didn't last very long, which made the whole experience less fun and cost more money over time. There weren't many games made for it or changed to work with it. Super Scope 6, which came with it, had a bunch of mini-games to show what it could do, while Battle Clash and Yoshi's Safari tried to use it in a more structured way, but none of these games were popular enough to make more games for the Super Scope. It sold pretty well at first, because it was distributed widely and came in a bundle, but it never sold enough to keep getting new games. So, the Super Scope became a well-known and cool accessory, but it was held back by design choices that focused more on how it looked and the idea of being in the game, rather than being accurate and easy to use. The Virtual Boy, which came out in 1995 and cost about $180, was one of Nintendo's most experimental projects ever. Gunpei Yokoi created it, and it used a special 3D technology. It had 2 red screens that only showed one color, and moving mirrors that made it look like a 3D picture. Unlike today's VR headsets, it didn't track your head. The 3D effect was always the same and only worked because each eye saw a different image. This made it less complicated to build, but it didn't feel very immersive. From a comfort point of view, the device had some clear problems. Even though it was called Virtual Boy, it wasn't really portable. You had to set it on a surface using a stiff stand. The person using it had to stay in a very specific position with their face in the visor, and they couldn't move around much. Playing for a long time quickly made people tired, both physically and their eyes. The color red was chosen because of technology limits and how much it cost to make. It made the colors stand out more, but it also made people's eyes hurt after just a few minutes of playing. The game library was super small, with just over a dozen games. Among these, Mario's Tennis and Wario Land were the best tries at using the 3D effect. But most games didn't really use the third dimension well in their gameplay. A lot of times, the 3D effect felt extra, without really changing how you played the game. From a business point of view, the Virtual Boy sold about 770,000 units worldwide. It wasn't sold everywhere, and the price dropped quickly just a few months after it came out. Support for it stopped in less than a year, making it one of the shortest-lived consoles Nintendo ever made. A fun fact about how it was made: the project started as a way to balance new ideas with keeping costs down, at a time when Nintendo was already putting money into the next 64-bit generation. This led to some old-fashioned tech choices that really limited what the device could do. Even though it didn't sell well, the Virtual Boy was a big step. It clearly showed the problems with virtual reality at home, pointing out the need for better pictures, more comfort, and movement tracking. These things would only become normal many years later. The Atari Jaguar VR, made around 1995 as an add-on for the Atari Jaguar, was one of the biggest tries to bring virtual reality to homes before the technology was really ready. The device was made as a full headset, with separate screens for each eye and a system to track your head using special sensors. It was supposed to cost about $300, making it a fancy extra for a system that was already having trouble selling. From a technical side, the problems were clear even in the early versions. The screen refresh rate was too slow for a smooth experience, with images that flickered and didn't stay clear. This problem, along with a big delay in tracking head movements, made what you saw not match what you were doing. This caused a strong feeling of being lost, with people often getting motion sickness after even short times using it. The main console's limited power was another big problem. The Atari Jaguar, even though it was advertised as advanced, couldn't handle complex 3D worlds well enough for virtual reality. The early game versions, like Missile Command 3D, showed very simple scenes, with basic shapes and a shaky frame rate. This hurt not just how real it felt, but also how fun it was to play. The project never made it to stores. After some internal demos and a few public showings, Atari decided to cancel it before it officially launched. They didn't want to spend more money on something that would probably fail. There are no sales numbers, and only a very small number of prototype units still exist today. These are now considered super rare. Here's an interesting fact about the company at the time. The Jaguar VR was developed when Atari was really struggling financially. They were looking for something new and exciting to boost their platform. Canceling the project basically showed that the technology just wasn't ready yet. It became one of the most famous examples of an idea that was ahead of its time but couldn't actually be made. Even today, people talk about it as one of the biggest what-ifs in the history of video game accessories. The Nintendo 64DD, released only in Japan in 1999 for about $150, was meant to be more than just an add-on. It was designed to be a big part of the Nintendo 64 itself. It used special 64 NLB magnetic discs that you could write on again and again. This let you do things cartridges couldn't, like save more game data, update games, and even create your own stuff. The system plugged right into the bottom of the console. It also connected to its own online service called RANDNet. This service let you download things, see leaderboards, and talk to other players. These were very advanced features for that time. From a technical side, the 64DD had some good ideas compared to cartridges. It was cheaper to make, and you could write on the discs many times. But it was slower to get data from the discs. This meant games had loading screens, which Nintendo 64 games usually didn't have. This felt like a step backward from how fast the console usually was. Also, the magnetic discs were easy to break, and needing extra hardware made people less interested in buying it. The software support was really small and broken up. F-Zero X expansion kit really showed what could be done with more content, adding new tracks and a cool editor. The Mario Artist series was all about being creative, letting users draw, animate, and play around with digital tools. But many of the big projects announced years before never got finished or were changed to games for other systems, which made people much less interested in the device. Sales stopped at less than 20,000 units, which is super low, even considering how few places it was sold. The late launch was a big problem. After years of delays, the market had already moved on to newer stuff, especially the disc-based systems that competitors were using. The Nintendo 64 cartridges, even though they were expensive, still worked faster, making the 64DD not a very good option. An interesting thing is how the 64DD was used as a testing ground. Many of its ideas, like digital downloads, extra content, and built-in creative tools, were things that became common later on. But because it didn't have the right setup and wasn't sure where it fit in the market, it couldn't really make a splash. This made it one of Nintendo's biggest hardware failures ever. The Dreamcast Fishing Controller, released by Sega in 1999 for the Sega Dreamcast, was made to be a special tool for a very specific game experience. Playing sports fishing games at home, just like in an arcade. This device came out with the game Sega Bass Fishing, which was made from the start to use all of its features. Technically, the controller had a working analog reel that was directly connected to the console's input system. The reel didn't just click into place, it turned smoothly, letting you control the speed and tension of the fishing line very precisely. This made it very different from regular controllers, where you'd use buttons or joysticks to do similar things. The device also had a motion sensor that detected tilt, which was used to control where you cast your line and how you handled the fishing rod. This system was supported by built-in vibration feedback, which reacted instantly to changes in line tension when a fish pulled and when the player made mistakes. This combination made the gap smaller between what you did with your hands and what happened on the screen, creating a more direct link between your actions and the results. It first came out costing about $30, which wasn't too much for a special game accessory. We don't have exact numbers for how many were sold, but people guess it was somewhere between a few 100,000 and just over 1 million worldwide. That's pretty good when you think about how only around 9 million Dreamcast consoles were sold in total. From a business point of view, the fishing controller was always a niche product. It was only really useful for one specific type of game and didn't work for anything else. But for that one type of game, it was really accurate and consistent, better than most other game accessories at the time. In the bigger picture of video game accessories, it was pretty unusual. It was a very specialized device that wasn't trying to do many things, but instead, it was trying to do one thing really, really well. This choice meant not as many people bought it, but it also kept its unique identity. It became one of the best examples of hardware made just for one kind of gaming experience. The Steel Battalion Controller, released in 2002 for Xbox by Capcom in partnership with Microsoft, was one of the most extreme examples of a dedicated peripheral. Sold in a bundle with Steel Battalion for about $200, it was designed to be a physical extension of the mech's cockpit, not just a simple controller. It had 3 separate parts that connected to each other: a main panel, a side unit, and a pedal board. Altogether, it had over 40 physical inputs, including toggle switches, lighted buttons, 2 analog joysticks, and 3 separate pedals for movement and control. Each command had a specific and unique job: starting the system, managing weapons, controlling the view, communications, and emergency actions. This way of doing things removed any simplifications you'd find in regular controllers, making players learn a lot to use it. The design wasn't just about being complicated, but about following steps. To start a mission, you had to do a specific set of actions, just like turning on a real vehicle. During the game, using many systems at once meant you had to use your hands and feet together. This made playing the game a continuous process, not just a bunch of separate button presses. From a business point of view, sales were not huge. Estimates say about 200,000 units were sold around the world. This number makes sense because it was a fancy, expensive item, and only for a certain type of game console. The high price, its big size, and being very specific limited who bought it, mostly to a small group of dedicated fans. One of the most special things was a permanent punishment rule. If your mech got destroyed, you had to manually press the eject button. If you didn't do this, the game would permanently delete your saved progress. This made the game more intense and made every mistake really matter, which fit with the whole idea of the game being a simulation. These gadgets weren't just mistakes or weird things, they were important steps in how things changed over time. Each one tried to go beyond what was possible back then. Sometimes they didn't work out, but they left behind ideas that people would use years later. In a world where things are becoming more and more the same, these experiments show us a time when people were braver, even if it meant making mistakes. And that's the end of our trip down memory lane. How many of these cool facts did you already know? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell for more trips into the world of retro gaming. Thanks for watching Retro Legends, and we'll see you in the next video. Stay retro, stay legends.